The chamber is open and full of whispers.
Before we dive in, check the link in the description if you want exclusive timelines, members-only videos you won't find on YouTube, all on our Patreon. The summer Harry Potter was 5 years old. Number 4. Privet Drive. A little past 7 in the morning. The street was the kind of clean that required effort. Gutters swept, hedges squared, every wheelie bin aligned with the precision of people who had decided that the appearance of order was indistinguishable from order itself. The houses were identical in the way that things become identical, when the people inside them want very badly to be seen as the same as their neighbors. Same doors, same windows, same careful distance between the rose bushes and the property line. The owl arrived at 6:53. Not a ministry owl. Those were brown and officious and carried scrolls with red wax seals that smelled of bureaucratic self-importance. This owl was black, completely, flatly black, with eyes the color of old gold and talons that gripped the Dursley letterbox with the specific confidence of a creature that had never once considered the possibility that it was unwelcome anywhere. It dropped a single envelope through the slot. Then it waited on the doorstep. Vernon Dursley found the envelope at 7:04, between the electric bill and a circular from the garden center. He almost threw it away. The paper was wrong, too heavy, cream-colored, with a texture that felt like it had been pressed under something enormous for a very long time. The ink on the front was not printed. It had been written by hand in a script that was neither the looping cursive of formal correspondence nor the tight block letters of business communication, but something older than both, angular and deliberate, each letter cut rather than drawn. Mr. Vernon Dursley. Director, Grunnings Ltd. Regarding the estate of Harry James Potter, Minor Ward. Ref, Potter Trust Account, Gringotts Wizarding Bank. Audit Case File 1186 pp. Priority, Sovereign. Vernon read it twice. Then he read the word sovereign a third time, standing in his hallway in his dressing gown, and something in his stomach did something unpleasant. He opened the envelope. The document inside was 4 pages. The first page was a statement of account, the Potter Family Trust, opened upon the ward's placement. Current balance rendered in a number that made Vernon's eyes move over it 3 times before his brain accepted the figure. Below the balance, a transaction history, standard vault maintenance fees, standard interest accrual, standard quarterly audit notations. And then, at the bottom of the first page, in a different ink, darker, slightly red at the edges, the color of something that had been pressed into the paper rather than written onto it, irregular activity detected, 14 August 1984. Unauthorized use of ward's name for credit application, Grunnings Commercial Loan Ref, GR 4471. Applicant, V.J. Dursley. Application withdrawn following detection. Flag status, active. Vernon's face went the color of old putty. The second page was a legal document. Dense, in 3 columns, the margins filled with annotation in a script so small it required squinting. Vernon did not read it. He got as far as the header, Ragnuk Accord, Treaty of 1402, High Status Ward Provisions, Section 14. Subsection C, Physical Intervention Rights of the Designated Financial Guardian in cases of verified ward neglect, and stopped. The third page was a list. Itemized, dated, specific, 4 November 1980, ward assigned cupboard under stairs as primary sleeping quarters. Dimensions, 91 cm x 183 cm. No window, no ventilation. 12 March 1982, ward denied meal for period of 36 hours. Medical notation, underweight for age cohort, 11th percentile. 7 June 1983, ward treated for bruised ribs, no medical professional consulted. Self-reported cause, fell. The list continued for 2 full pages. Someone had been watching number 4 Privet Drive for 6 years. Someone had been writing it all down. The knock at the front door came at 7:30 precisely. Not a knock, 4 strikes, evenly spaced, with something harder than a human knuckle. The sound of it carried through the house in a way that suggested the door had been struck by something that was entirely certain of its right to strike it. Vernon opened the door. There were 3 of them. The one in front stood at just over 4 feet, which meant Vernon's first instinct was to look down, and his second instinct, arriving approximately half a second later, was to understand that looking down had been a mistake, because the figure looking back up at him had the kind of face that made the direction of the gaze entirely irrelevant. Sharp features, eyes like hammered copper, a jaw that suggested the skull behind it had been designed for a species that had been settling arguments through superior metallurgy for 10,000 years. He wore dark gray robes with obsidian buttons, and over the robes a vest of something that was not quite leather and not quite metal, and at his belt 2 things, a short-handled axe with runes etched along the haft, and a leather satchel fat with documents. The 2 behind him were larger and said nothing, and had the specific quality of people who were not there to speak. "Mr. Vernon Dursley," the one in front said. His voice was low and precise, each consonant finished completely before the next one began. "I am Ironshard, Senior Vault Warden and Audit Officer, Gringotts Wizarding Bank, London. I am here on behalf of the Potter Trust Case File 1186 PP under authority of the Ragnuk Accord of 1402 High Status Ward Provisions." He reached into the satchel and produced a second copy of the 4-page document, which he held out with 2 fingers. "You have received our preliminary notice. This is the formal service of proceedings." Vernon did not take the document. "Now see here," Vernon said. He used the voice he used for contractors who had quoted too high and subordinates who had missed deadlines, the voice of a man accustomed to size being sufficient. "I don't know what sort of bank sends people to a man's home at 7:30 on a Tuesday. The sort," Ironshard said, "that has documented 6 years of ward neglect, 1 count of fraudulent credit application using a minor's estate, and a preliminary violation notice that your solicitors will find very interesting reading." He did not raise his voice. He did not adjust his posture. "I would recommend taking the document, Mr. Dursley. The alternative is that I note your refusal of service in the file, which activates the escalation clause, which brings a ministry co-investigator here by 9 o'clock. I find ministry co-investigators tedious. You may feel differently." Vernon took the document. Petunia appeared at the top of the stairs. She had heard the knock. She had heard the voice. She stood on the landing in her dressing gown with the expression she wore when something magical had breached the perimeter of her carefully constructed normal life, an expression of simultaneous fury and terror, both fighting for the same face. "What is happening?" she said. Not to Ironshard. To Vernon. "Bank people," Vernon said. His voice had changed. Smaller, Gringotts, Petunia's hand found the banister. Ironshard looked up at her with his copper eyes. "Mrs. Dursley," he said, "is the ward present in the house?" Petunia stopped. "He is sleeping in the cupboard under the stairs," Ironshard said. "Not a question." He produced a small brass instrument from his vest pocket, flat, circular, with a needle pointing at the door beneath the staircase with the unwavering certainty of a compass. "I will need to see him." For the welfare assessment. This is a required step under Section 14, subsection C. It is not optional. The cupboard door opened at 7:41. Harry Potter was 5 years old, and he had been awake since the knock. Listening through the thin door with the specific attentiveness of a child who has learned that information gathered quietly is safer than information asked for. He was sitting on the narrow cot with his knees drawn up, wearing a T-shirt that had belonged to Dudley and therefore hung to his thighs, and he looked at the 3 figures in the hallway with the careful, measuring look of someone much older. Ironshard crouched. He looked at the boy in the cupboard, at the dimensions of it, at the crack in the plasterboard above the cot where the staircase pressed down, at the single shelf with its 3 books, not Dudley's books, which were in the room upstairs, but library books, returned and reborrowed and re-returned, the spines soft from reading. He looked at the boy's wrist, at the fading yellow of an old bruise. He looked at the number written in black marker on the inside of the cupboard door, HP, in a child's handwriting. Someone had been counting something in pencil beside it. Small tallies. 4 and a cross. Harry had been counting the days. Ironshard reached into his satchel and produced a 4th document, this one single page, heavy, the bottom edge already stamped with a seal that glowed faintly red in the dim hallway. He placed it on the floor between himself and the boy. Harry James Potter, Ironshard said. Sole heir to the Potter estate, Peverell line of succession, Gringotts account holder by blood right since his parents died. He looked at the boy steadily. My name is Ironshard. I work for the bank that holds your family's money. We have been looking for you. Harry looked at the document on the floor, then at Ironshard. You're not a wizard, Harry said. No, Ironshard said. Are you magic? Of a kind, Ironshard said. Our kind. Harry looked at the stamp on the document, at the red glow of it, which pulsed slowly, like something breathing. The stamp is alive, Harry said. It is a blood seal, Ironshard said. It confirms the document is genuine. It cannot be forged. That's how we found you. We detected someone attempting to use your name to borrow money. The seal caught it. He paused. You were not very well hidden, Harry Potter. The people who hid you were not very careful. Behind Ironshard, Vernon made a sound. Ironshard did not turn around. Mr. Dursley, he said, without moving his gaze from the boy. The document I have left with you details your liability under the Ragnarok Accord, financial, civil, and under 2 sections of wizarding law that your solicitor will need several weeks to research. I recommend beginning that process today. He reached into his satchel a final time and produced a small card, brass-edged, which he set beside the blood seal document. You may also wish to read Section 9, which covers the bank's right to recover costs incurred during the audit process from the negligent party. He said the word negligent the way a knife goes into a sheath, smooth, final, exactly placed. That section is quite detailed. He stood. He looked at Harry. We're going to go now, Ironshard said. Would you like to bring the books? Harry looked at the library books on the shelf. He looked at the hallway beyond the cupboard door where Vernon Dursley stood with 4 pages of documentation in his hand, and the specific expression of a man who has just understood that the machinery he thought he controlled had been watching him from the beginning. Harry picked up the books. He stepped out of the cupboard. He did not look at his uncle. He did not look at his aunt on the landing. He walked to the front door and threw it into the morning, and Ironshard walked beside him, and the 2 larger goblins fell in behind them, and the owl on the doorstep lifted from the ground and wheeled overhead once before heading south. Behind them, the door to number 4, Privet Drive, closed. Vernon Dursley stood in his hallway with 4 pages of documentation and a bill he had not yet finished reading, and the sound of the goblins' boots on the pavement faded down the street, and the morning was very quiet. In the kitchen, the electric bill sat on the counter, still unopened. It was the least of his problems. Gringotts went down further than anyone who had only ever visited the public floors understood. The marble lobby with its chandelier and its long counter and its goblins in scarlet and gold was the face of the building, the part designed to be seen, to communicate weight and permanence and the specific kind of authority that came from being the only institution in Wizarding Britain that had never once been successfully robbed and remained operational. Wizards came to the lobby. Wizards used the carts. Wizards went to their vaults and came back up and left, and they understood Gringotts the way you understood a city, by standing in its train station. The sub-levels were different. The carts went to vault level 713. Below that, the shafts continued. Narrower, older, cut from a different quality of stone. The walls no longer dressed and polished, but raw, bearing the marks of the tools that had made them 10 centuries ago. The air changed below the cart terminus. Warmer, heavier, carrying the smell of metal and earth and something else that had no name in any wizard language, because no wizard had spent enough time down here to develop one. Harry learned the smell on the first day. He learned it the way you learn the smell of a place that was going to become home, not by analyzing it, but by stopping noticing it, which happened faster than he expected. The room they gave him was on sub-level 4. Not a vault, a room, with a door that opened from the inside as easily as the outside, which was the first thing Ironshard told him, and told him clearly, crouching to Harry's eye level in the corridor outside while the door stood open behind him. "This door is yours," Ironshard said. "It opens when you want it open and closes when you want it closed. That is the rule for this room. Do you understand the rule?" Harry looked at the door. It was iron, old, with runes along the frame that glowed faintly amber in the corridor's torchlight. The handle was on both sides. "Yes," Harry said. "Good," Ironshard said. He stood. The corridor outside goes left to the training hall and right to the mess. Meals at 6, 12, and 7. If you're hungry between meals, the mess has bread and hard cheese on the counter. You don't have to ask. Harry looked at him. "I don't have to ask," Harry said. "No," Ironshard said. Harry looked at the door again, at the handle on the inside. He went into the room and closed the door, and stood in the dark for a moment. Then he opened it. Then he closed it. He did this 4 more times before he was satisfied, and when he was satisfied, he left it open and went to look at the room. Stone walls, a narrow bed with wool blankets, a desk bolted to the wall with a lamp above it that burned without flame. A goblin light, steadier than candles, the color of late afternoon. A shelf above the desk, empty, a chest at the foot of the bed for his things, which currently consisted of 3 library books, the t-shirt he was wearing, and a brass button he had found on the pavement outside Privet Drive 2 years ago, and kept because it was the only thing he owned that nobody had given him and nobody could take back. He put the button on the shelf. He put the library books beside it. He sat on the bed and pressed his hands into the mattress, and it gave properly, the way mattresses were supposed to give, not like the cot in the cupboard, which had a spring on the left side that had broken years ago and never been fixed. He lay down. The goblin light above the desk stayed on, steady and amber, and the stone walls held their warmth, and somewhere below him the deep vaults breathed their old mineral breath. And Harry Potter, age 5, stared at the ceiling of a room that had a door he controlled, and slept for 11 hours without waking. The training started on the 3rd day. Not weapons. Ironshard was specific about this, in the way he was specific about most things, which was to say he stated it once, and did not repeat it, because repeating things implied the listener hadn't understood the first time, which was an insult he didn't intend. Rune literacy first, Ironshard said. Then metallurgy, then history, then physical training. In that order. The order is not arbitrary. They were in the training hall, low-ceilinged, lit by the same amber lights. The walls covered in rune charts that were not decorative but functional, each one a working inscription that did something specific to the room's properties. The temperature, the sound, the way metal behaved inside the space. Harry sat cross-legged on the stone floor across from Ironshard, with a slate and a rune stylus, and looked at the first chart. "Why runes first?" Harry said. "Because everything else is runes," Ironshard said. "The metal knows runes. The vaults know runes. The accord is written in runes. If you cannot read the language, you cannot read anything." He tapped the first symbol on the chart, a vertical line bisected by 2 horizontals, the upper one longer. "This one. What does it mean? What do you think it means?" Harry looked at it. at the way the upper horizontal was longer, at the way the bisection was not centered, but slightly high. Something about, more on top than bottom, Harry said. Something uneven. Ironshard looked at him for a moment. It means sovereign, he said. The upper line is authority. The lower line is foundation. The foundation is smaller because sovereignty does not rest on a broad base. It rests on a specific one. He paused. You were close. Harry wrote it on his slate. He wrote it 7 more times. The other goblins on sub-level 4 were not assigned to him. They were simply present, going about the work of the deep levels, which was the maintenance and security of the lower vaults, the forge work, the curse-breaker assessments of incoming items. The ledger keeping that never stopped, because the bank never closed. Not really. Not in its deep parts where time moved differently than it did in the marble lobby 500 feet above. They noticed him the way professionals noticed something new in a familiar environment. Precisely, without comment, cataloging. After the first week, a curse-breaker named Flinty began leaving things on the desk in Harry's room. Not gifts. Goblin culture did not have the same relationship with gift-giving that wizard culture did. Relevant materials. A rune lexicon with the most common vault symbols flagged in copper ink. A metallurgy primer, dense and technical, written for adult goblins, and therefore exactly the right difficulty. A short history of the Ragnuk Accord. The original treaty language on one side, Flinty's own annotations on the other, in a script so small Harry needed to hold the paper close to the lamp to read it. Harry read everything. He returned the lexicon with 3 questions written in the margins in pencil, careful and specific. The next morning it came back with 3 answers, equally specific, and 2 additional references. This was how it worked. Nobody offered warmth the way wizards offered warmth. Nobody put an arm around him or said well done in a voice designed to make him feel good. What they offered was attention. The specific goblin form of respect, which was to treat what you did as worth engaging with seriously. Harry understood this by the end of the 2nd week and found it, on balance, more sustaining than the alternative. On the 23rd day, Flinty did the scan. It was presented as routine. Harry had been told that all residents of the sub-levels underwent periodic magical health assessments, which was true, and that his would happen in the 3rd week, which was also true, and that it would take 10 minutes and require him to sit still, which was the part Harry found easiest. Flinty used a brass instrument about the length of a forearm, jointed, with 3 lenses along its upper edge, and a series of rune dials along the grip. He passed it slowly over Harry's head, his chest, his hands, in the methodical way of someone running a check they had run 1,000 times. He stopped at Harry's forehead. He passed the instrument over the scar twice. 3 times. He adjusted one of the dials, passed it again. His face did not change, because Flinty's face almost never changed, but his stillness changed quality. From the stillness of routine to the stillness of someone who had found something in a familiar place and was not yet sure what it was. He made a notation in his ledger. Small, precise, in the cramped rune script that curse-breakers used for their technical logs, foreign signature, non-native, origin unknown, monitoring ongoing. "What is it?" Harry said. Flinty looked at him, assessed the question for what it actually was, not a child asking to be reassured, but a child asking for accurate information. "Something that doesn't belong," Flinty said. "In your scar. Something magical. Something old," Flinty said. "And not yours." He closed his ledger. "I don't have a name for it yet. When I have a name for it, I will tell you." "Will it hurt me?" Harry said. Flinty considered the question with genuine seriousness. "Not today," he said, "but eventually." He paused. "We will not let it. That is what the deep vaults are for, finding the things that don't belong and removing them." He said it not with performed confidence, but with the flat certainty of someone stating a technical problem and its intended resolution in the same breath. Harry looked at the scar and the reflection of the brass instrument's lens. Lightning-shaped. He had always known it was there. The Dursleys had never told him where it came from, and he had learned not to ask about it the same way he had learned not to ask about most things. He looked at his own reflection and thought about something old and not his, sitting in his scar like a squatter in a house it hadn't paid for. "Okay," Harry said. "Tell me when you have the name." "Yes," Flint-Eye said. He stood, pocketed the instrument, picked up his ledger. At the door he paused. "The third question you wrote in the lexicon margins. About the blood resonance threshold for high-status ward detection." He looked at Harry with his Cursebreaker's eyes, which had spent 30 years looking at things and determining what they actually were. That was a good question. It took me 4 years to think to ask it. He left. Harry sat in the training hall in the amber light and looked at the rune chart on the wall, the sovereign symbol, vertical line bisected by 2 horizontals, upper one longer, and thought about the thing in his scar, and about names for things, and about the difference between a problem and a problem that had been found. Found problems, the goblins had taught him in 23 days, were the only kind you could solve. He picked up his stylus. He went back to work. The file on Hermione Jean Granger arrived on Ironshard's desk on a Thursday in the autumn of Harry's second year below ground. Not because anyone had been looking for her specifically. Because the blood ledger audit system that Gringotts ran on all Potter-adjacent financial records had a secondary function that most wizards didn't know about, and the Ministry had never thought to ask about. A proximity scan, running continuously, that flagged any magical signature within a 3-mile radius of a registered Gringotts ward that demonstrated unusual properties. The scan had been running since Harry arrived. It flagged Hermione Granger on a Tuesday afternoon outside a branch library in Hampstead, when she solved a mathematical problem in the margins of a library book that had defeated 3 adult researchers at University College London. And the specific quality of the thinking, structured, lateral, building each step on the last, with the clean logic of someone who had internalized systems rather than just learned rules, registered on the blood ledger as something the instrument had no existing category for. It filed it under anomalous competency. Review recommended. Ironshard reviewed it on Thursday. He read the file twice. Then he sent for Flint-Eye. Flint-Eye read the file once. "Muggle-born," he said. "Yes," Ironshard said. 8 years old. 8, Ironshard said. 9 in September, the 19th. Flint-Eye set the file down. He looked at the ceiling of Ironshard's office, low, stone, with a rune inscription along the central beam that had been there since the sublevel was first cut and had not needed maintenance once. What is measured is known. What is known is held. The ledger arithmetic she ran, Flint-Eye said. In the margin, compound interest calculation, Ironshard said. Across 3 currencies, adjusted for variable rates, projected over 30 years. No calculator, no reference material, 8 years old. He paused. She got it right. Flint-Eye was quiet for a moment. "What does the ward think?" he said. They both knew which ward he meant. "Harry doesn't know yet," Ironshard said. "I want to meet the girl first." The meeting happened on a Saturday. Ironshard went in his professional capacity, which meant the dark gray robes and the obsidian buttons and the leather satchel, and he brought no one with him. Because bringing an escort to a meeting with a child and her parents in a Hampstead sitting room would have communicated the wrong thing entirely. The Grangers were dentists. Their sitting room showed it, clean, organized, the bookshelves arranged with the practicality of people who read for information and pleasure in equal measure and saw no reason to pretend otherwise. Mr. Granger offered tea. Mrs. Granger sat with her hands folded, and the expression of a woman who had decided that the correct response to a formally dressed goblin appearing on her doorstep was to remain calm and gather information before forming an opinion. Hermione sat in the armchair across from Ironshard and looked at him with dark eyes that were conducting their own assessment and making no effort to conceal it. "You're from Gringotts," she said. "Yes," Ironshard said, "the Wizarding Bank." "You know about the Wizarding world," Ironshard said. "I know about it the way you know about things you've researched," Hermione said. "I found references in 3 separate books in the British Library Special Collections. The indexing was inconsistent, but the cross-references were there if you looked for them." She paused. "I've been looking for them since I was 6. Mrs. Granger made a small sound. "You didn't tell us," she said. "I didn't want to worry you," Hermione said. "I wasn't sure it was real yet." Ironshard looked at the girl in the armchair. At the straight-backed way she sat, not with the performance of good posture, but with the genuine physical alignment of someone who was fully present in their own body and fully present in the room simultaneously. At the book on the side table beside her, not a children's book, a history of medieval European trade systems, with 6 bookmarks in it and annotations visible on the exposed pages. "We are not here to recruit a wizard student," Ironshard said to both the girl and her parents. "Hogwarts will send its own letter in 3 years. That process is separate from ours, and we have no involvement in it." He set the satchel on the floor and folded his hands over his knees. "We are here because Gringotts has a research division. It handles the analysis of complex financial, historical, and magical documents, the work of understanding things that are old and complicated and that most people find tedious." He looked at Hermione. "We believe you would be very good at it." "I'm 8, Hermione said. "Almost 9, Ironshard said. The 19th of September, the apprenticeship would begin with theoretical work, document analysis, ledger mathematics, the structural logic of old treaty law. Nothing physical. Nothing dangerous. Your parents would be informed of everything, in writing, in advance. You would be compensated at a junior researcher's rate," he named a figure, "per month, deposited into a Gringotts account opened in your name." Mr. Granger set down his tea. "That's more than I make per month," he said. "Yes," Ironshard said. "Why?" Hermione said. "Not why so much. Just why. The more important question." "Because the work is genuinely difficult," Ironshard said. "And because we don't pay less than something is worth simply because the person doing it is young, or Muggle-born, or outside the category of people that Wizarding Britain has traditionally considered worth paying." He held her gaze. "The ledger calculation you performed in the Hampstead Library margin. You used a 3-variable compound interest model that the standard Wizarding financial curriculum doesn't introduce until the 5th year of formal banking apprenticeship." Hermione was very still. "It was just arithmetic," she said. "It was systems thinking," Ironshard said. "You didn't calculate each variable separately and sum them. You built a model that held all 3 in relation simultaneously and ran them forward. That's not arithmetic. That's architecture." He paused. "We have very few people who do it that way. Most of them are goblins. We would like to have one more." The sitting room was quiet. Mrs. Granger looked at Ironshard with the expression of a woman who has made a decision and intends to make it clearly. "We would need to see everything in writing," Mrs. Granger said. "Every task, every location, every person she would be working with. In advance." "Yes," Ironshard said, "and she can stop at any time." "The contract has a 30-day exit clause exercisable by either party," Ironshard said. "Or immediately, by Hermione, for any reason, without penalty." "There's another child," Hermione said. Ironshard looked at her. "In the file you brought," Hermione said. "You set the satchel down, but the flap isn't fully closed, and there are 2 folders visible. One has my name on the tab. The other one has initials." She looked at the satchel. "H.P." Ironshard did not look at the satchel. "Yes," he said. "There is another child. He has been with Gringotts for 2 years. He is 8 years old. Is he the reason you came to me? Hermione said. Specifically, you were found because our systems found you, he said. You are being offered the position because you are qualified for it. Both of those things are true, and neither cancels the other. He paused. But yes, part of the work of the research division is working alongside the ward. He is going to need someone who thinks the way you think. What way is that? Hermione said. Like the answer already exists, and the work is finding it, Ironshard said. Rather than like the work is performing the search. Something passed between Hermione and her parents. Not a conversation, just the compressed acknowledgement of a family that had been managing the reality of Hermione's particular mind, since she was old enough to make things happen accidentally when she was frustrated or happy or frightened. I want to meet him first, Hermione said. The other child. Before I decide. That can be arranged, Ironshard said. This week, Hermione said. Wednesday, he said. They met on sub-level 4. Ironshard brought Hermione down in a cart, not the tourist route but the direct shaft, which was faster and darker and smelled of hot metal and earth, and Hermione held the cart rail and looked at everything with the focused attention of someone filing information for later rather than reacting to it now. Harry was in the training hall when they arrived. He was working through a rune transcription exercise, copying a vault inscription from a clay tablet onto parchment, matching not just the symbol, but the pressure and angle of the original cuts. He looked up when they came in. He looked at the girl. She looked at him. He had a rune stylus in one hand and ink on 2 fingers, and his hair was doing something complicated in several directions simultaneously. She had a notebook already open, because she had been taking notes since the cart. You're Harry, she said. You're the researcher, he said. Possibly, she said. I haven't decided yet. She looked at the clay tablet, at the parchment, at the rune he had been copying. She tilted her head. The 3rd symbol on the 2nd row. The angle is slightly off. It should lean 4 degrees further left. Harry looked at the tablet, at the parchment. He adjusted the stylus and looked at the copy again. You can read runes, he said. I read the primer Flint-Eye wrote, she said. On the cart. It was in the satchel. Harry looked at Ironshard. Ironshard had the expression he wore when something had confirmed a thing he already knew. She read it on the cart, Harry said. It's 40 pages, Ironshard said. I read quickly, Hermione said. She looked at Harry. What's the thing in your scar? Harry went very still. Flint-Eye's notation was in the medical log in the satchel, Hermione said. Foreign signature, non-native, origin unknown, monitoring ongoing. She looked at the scar. Then, at Harry. That sounds like something that needs a name. Flint-Eye said he'd find one, Harry said. I could help, Hermione said. Finding names for things is mostly cross-referencing. If you have access to the historical records, we have access to everything, Harry said. She looked at him, at the ink on his fingers, at the rune work on the walls, at the amber goblin light and the stone and the depth of the place around them. All right, she said. She sat down on the floor across from him, opened her notebook to the 1st page, and picked up her pen. Show me the transcription method. From the beginning, Harry looked at her. Then he held out the stylus. She took it. In the doorway, Ironshard said nothing. He turned and walked back toward the corridor, and his boots made their even sound on the stone, and behind him 2 children sat on the floor of the training hall on sub-level 4, and began, without ceremony or declaration, to work. King's Cross Station. The first morning of the school year. Not yet 11 o'clock. The station moved the way large public spaces moved, in currents, people finding their routes through each other with the specific unconscious navigation of urban crowds, trolleys and cases and the smell of diesel, and the announcement board flickering over Platform 9. Ordinary, loud, the particular texture of a place that did not know it was about to contain something it had no category for. Harry and Hermione came through the barrier at 10:54. They did not come through together. Harry first, Then Hermione 30 seconds behind, which was Ironshard's protocol. You do not enter new environments simultaneously. You enter sequentially and assess before the second person commits. Harry stood on platform 9 3/4 for 30 seconds before Hermione came through. And in those 30 seconds, he looked at everything. The Hogwarts Express. Scarlet, enormous, breathing steam in the September morning. Families on the platform, the particular mix of robes and ordinary clothes, the owls and cages, the cats and baskets. The pointed hats that sat slightly wrong on heads that hadn't worn them long enough to know how. Children finding compartments. Parents managing the specific controlled grief of sending children away for the first time or the 7th time. Harry noted the exits, the positions of the adults on the platform, the sight lines, the 3 Hogwarts staff members visible near the engine. Then Hermione came through the barrier beside him. "Staff near the engine," she said quietly. "One of them is watching us already." "McGonagall," Harry said. "Transfiguration Professor, Deputy Headmistress. She'll know who we are." "Everyone will know who we are," Hermione said. "That's not the variable. The variable is what they do with knowing." They had discussed this, in the sub-levels, over 3 weeks in August, with Ironshard and Flintag and 2 senior curse-breakers who had experience with surface world institutional dynamics. The discussion had been practical rather than anxious. Harry picked up his trunk. Hermione picked up hers. They walked down the platform. The staring started at the barrier and built as they moved. Not because of Harry's scar. The scar was invisible under the fall of his hair. The staring was because of what they were wearing. Standard Hogwarts uniform on top, black robes, correct tie, correct hat, though neither wore it. Underneath the robes, not visible until you looked for the specific way the fabric sat. Armor. Goblin forged. Sub-level 3. The forge that had been running for centuries. Obsidian dark, close-fitted, the individual plates so small and so precisely joined that the overall effect was not of armor but of a second skin. Along the collar, barely visible above the robe line, a band of rune inscription in copper, the Gringotts seal, noting that this belonged to a sovereign ward of the bank and the bank's treaty rights applied to its contents. At Harry's left hip, under the robe, the hilt of a goblin-forged blade. Short, functional, not decorative. The armor had been in the test forge for 3 years, struck daily with standardized curse loads. The blade had been forged the previous winter by Ironshard personally. Over 6 weeks, from an alloy that included trace amounts of the same goblin silver as the sword of Gryffindor. Harry had watched every session and had not asked to touch it until Ironshard offered it, which happened on the 42nd day, and when he held it the weight was exactly right in a way that had nothing to do with balance tables and everything to do with the fact that it had been forged for his specific hand by someone who had been watching his specific hand work for 5 years. He had not drawn it on the platform. He would not draw it on the platform. But it was there. They found a compartment in the middle of the train, not the first available, the third one, which had sight lines to both ends of the corridor, and which Hermione had already stopped at when Harry caught up. They stowed their trunks and sat, and watched the platform through the window. A red-haired boy passed the compartment twice before stopping. He was tall and gangly, and had an expression of transparent curiosity that he was making no effort to conceal, which Harry found immediately less irritating than concealed curiosity would have been. The boy slid the door open. "Everywhere else is full," he said. Then, looking at the armor visible above the robe collar, "Blimey, is that goblin work?" "Yes," Harry said. The boy sat down with the directness of someone who had decided the answer was sufficient. "Ron Weasley, Harry Potter." Ron's expression did something quick and complicated. The recognition, the recalibration, the settling. "Right, yeah, my dad works at the ministry. He said there was a situation." He looked at the armor again. He didn't say there was armor. "There wasn't much information released," Hermione said. "Deliberately, Hermione Granger," Ron said. "You're the researcher. Dad mentioned you too. He said you were the reason the Malfoys' quarterly audit went sideways last spring. The audit went sideways because the Malfoy estate had 3 items in its private vault registered as destroyed that were not destroyed, Hermione said. I found the discrepancy in the registration records. The audit did the rest. Ron looked at her for a moment. You're 11, he said. Almost 12, she said. Ron settled back in his seat with the air of someone who has decided the situation is unusual and interesting rather than unusual and threatening. So what house do you think you'll be in? The sorting process will be interesting, Harry said. Hermione looked at him. He looked back. They did not elaborate. Ron looked between them with the expression of someone who understood that something had been communicated and that he was not yet in possession of the context to decode it. The castle arrived the way it always arrived for first years, out of the darkness across the lake, lit from within. Enormous in the way that things are enormous when they have been built by people who understood that scale communicates intention. Harry looked at it from the boat and read the words on it the way Flint-Eye had taught him to read inscriptions, not translating symbol by symbol, but feeling the overall structure, the way you felt the layout of a room from the doorway. Old magic, very old, layered over centuries, each headmaster's additions sitting over the previous ones like geological strata. And underneath all of it, in the deep stone of the foundations, something that resonated faintly with the rune inscription on their armor. The founding charters, Hermione said quietly from beside him in the boat. Predating the ministry, Harry said. Predating a lot of things, she said. The Great Hall, 400 students, the staff table, the floating candles, the ceiling enchanted to show the cloud-thick September sky. Harry and Hermione stood with the other first years, and the hall looked at them with the attention of a crowd that has been waiting for something and has just seen it arrive. Professor McGonagall stood at the front. She looked at Harry for a moment, a long, specific moment, the kind that is not a stare but an assessment, and then she looked at the armor above his collar and the hilt line and then back at his face, and whatever she was thinking went into the expression she wore when she had decided to proceed. When McGonagall called Granger, Hermione walked to the stool with the same straight-backed composure she had walked into Ironshard's training hall with 3 years ago, and the hat came down, and 30 seconds later it said Gryffindor, and the table cheered. Potter, Harry, the hall went absolutely still. He walked to the stool. He sat. The hat came down over his eyes, and the great hall disappeared into darkness and a voice. Old, dry, somewhere between amusement and surprise, spoke inside his head. Well, the hat said, this is different. Yes, Harry said. Gringotts, it was not quite a question. 5 years below ground. The rune work, the forge training, the blade. You're not what I expected from a Potter. What did you expect? Harry said. Something easier to read. Your father was straightforward. Brave, clever, loyal, a little reckless. I knew where to put him in 4 seconds. A pause. You're harder. The bravery is there. The intelligence. But they've been tempered, like the armor. You're not the same metal you were born as. No, Harry said. I'm not. Gryffindor would not be wrong, but you would find it limiting. A longer pause. You don't need a house to tell you what you are. You already know what you are. What you need is access, Harry said. The hat was quiet for a moment. Yes, it said. That's exactly the word. It lifted from his head. The great hall waited. The hat opened its brim and said, in a voice that carried to every corner of the stone room, this student bears the Gringotts sovereign seal. Under the provisions of the founding charter's Article 12, the sovereign guest clause, established at this castle's founding and never repealed, I designate Harry Potter a sovereign guest of Hogwarts Castle. All houses, all access, No binding allegiance. The silence that followed was the silence of 400 people encountering a clause of the founding charter that none of them had known existed. Dumbledore, at the center of the staff table, was very still. McGonagall had gone slightly pale. At the Slytherin table, Draco Malfoy was doing the rapid visible arithmetic of someone working out what all houses. All access meant for the existing hierarchy. Harry got off the stool. He walked to the Gryffindor table and sat down next to Hermione. Article 12, Hermione said quietly. I found it in the charter copy in the sub-level archive, Harry said. In July, page 43. You've known since July, she said. I wanted to see if the hat would find it independently, Harry said. It did. It's better when the institution finds its own precedents. It's harder to argue with. Hermione looked at the staff table, at Dumbledore, who was looking at Harry with an expression doing the work of a very intelligent man processing a variable he had not accounted for. He's going to want to meet with you, Hermione said. I know, Harry said. I'm going to let him wait 4 days first. The feast appeared on the tables. The great hall gradually returned to itself, the noise, the movement, the resumption of ordinary September, but underneath it, running through every conversation at every table, was the thing that had just happened. 400 students had just watched Harry Potter walk into Hogwarts and, in the first 5 minutes, quietly restructure the terms of his own attendance. Day 1. The meeting with Dumbledore happened on the 4th day. Harry had said 3 days and then reconsidered, because 3 days implied he had been counting, and counting implied anticipation, and anticipation implied the meeting mattered more to him than it did to Dumbledore, which was not the dynamic he intended to establish. 4 days was the correct interval. He sent the note on Wednesday evening, a single line, on plain parchment, no letterhead. Thursday, 10 o'clock. Your office, or a room of your choosing. Either is acceptable. H. Potter. The reply came within the hour. Thursday, 10 o'clock. My office. The password is Sherbet Lemon. A. P. W. B. Dumbledore. The office was exactly what the sub-level archive had described. Circular, silver instruments on spindle-legged tables, portraits of previous headmasters, the phoenix on its perch. Dumbledore sat behind the desk in robes of deep blue and looked at Harry over his half-moon spectacles with an expression that was doing several things simultaneously. Harry sat in the chair across the desk. He did not speak first. You waited 4 days, Dumbledore said. I did, Harry said. I expected 3, Dumbledore said. I know, Harry said. A pause, not uncomfortable, the specific pause of 2 people taking each other's measure. Article 12, Dumbledore said. The Sovereign Guest Clause. I spent 2 days with the founding charter after the feast. I found the clause on the 2nd day, which tells me either my archivist has been remiss or the clause was designed to be found only when you already knew it was there. The second one, Harry said. It's indexed under a subsection heading that reads Protocol, Visiting Dignitaries, Pre-Ministry Era. Most people stop reading when they see pre-ministry era because they assume anything pre-ministry is decorative rather than operative. And you didn't assume that, Dumbledore said. Gringotts taught me that old law is the most useful law, Harry said. Nobody's had time to close the loopholes yet. Dumbledore was quiet for a moment. You are very much your mother's son, he said. Lily had the same quality. The ability to state the most uncomfortable truth in the room as though it were simply accurate information. A pause. And your father's. The patience to wait 4 days. James would have come on the 2nd day and pretended it was the 3rd. Harry looked at the desk. Something moved in him that he did not display. I'd like access to the restricted section, Harry said. Unrestricted access. The Sovereign Guest Clause grants it. Section 4. Right of a sovereign guest to the full resources of the host institution. I know what Section 4 says, Dumbledore said. I found it on the 2nd day as well. Then you know the access is already mine, Harry said. I'm informing you as a courtesy. The third-floor corridor, Harry added. Right-hand side. Dumbledore went very still. We felt it on the boats, Harry said. Something old, warded heavily, warded recently, the recent wards sitting over older ones the way fresh paint sits over plaster. We're not going to go looking for it unsanctioned. I'm telling you we know it's there, because it's more useful to you to know that we know than to discover it later. He looked at Dumbledore steadily. The wards are ministry-adjacent in their structure and readable to anyone with sufficient training. It would benefit from a goblin ward layer over the top. I can arrange it through Iron Shard. Dumbledore looked at him for a long moment. Why? He said. Because whatever is in that corridor is here because it needed to be somewhere safe, Harry said. And because I find I have an interest in things at this school remaining intact. He picked up his bag. You'll have the goblin ward layer by the weekend. Harry, Dumbledore said as he reached the door. Your parents, James and Lily, they were extraordinary people. I know, Harry said. I've read everything about them that the sub-level archive had. Which is considerably more than the public record. He paused. I'd like to hear what you knew about them. When there's time. There will be time, Dumbledore said. Harry went down the stairs. The common room question was settled on the second night. Article 12 granted all houses all access, but Harry and Hermione needed somewhere to sleep. He had chosen Gryffindor for sleeping quarters because Hermione was there, and because the tower had the best sight lines to the grounds and the least foot traffic after midnight. He went to all 4 common rooms in the first week, not to establish territory but to read the environments. The Hufflepuff basement, warm, with a loyalty to craft in the way it was decorated. The Ravenclaw Tower, spare. The Bronze Knocker's riddle asking you to think before it let you in. The Slytherin dungeon, cold and green lit, with the quality of a place that had been told for a long time that its value was in what it could extract from situations. He found all 4 useful. He found all 4 limiting. What Article 12 had actually given him was freedom from any single common room's social gravity. On Friday, 2 Slytherin second years cornered Neville Longbottom in the corridor outside the Charms classroom. Harry was 15 feet away. He watched them take Neville's Remembrall and pass it between them with the specific casualness of people who had learned that casual cruelty was less punishable than obvious cruelty. Harry walked over. He stopped 3 feet from the second years and looked at them with the quality of attention that Iron Shard had spent 5 years developing. The look that preceded an audit. The look that said, I am reading what is actually here. That belongs to him, Harry said. The larger second year looked at Harry. At the armor, at the hilt line, back at Harry's face. We're just looking at it, he said. You're holding it, Harry said. Those are different things. Give it back! The Remembrall came back. The second years left with the precise speed of people committed to being elsewhere. Neville looked at Harry. Thank you, he said. They do that, they're always. Thank you. What's your name? Harry said. Neville Longbottom. Neville, Harry said. The next time that happens, you don't need to wait for someone else to be 15 feet away. You have a wand. I'm not very good yet, Harry said. You're not very good yet. Hermione runs a study session on Tuesday evenings in the library. Third table from the left. You should come. The Harry Potter is inviting me to a study session, Neville said. Harry said. Just Harry. Tuesday, 7 o'clock. Don't be late. Hermione starts exactly on time and considers lateness a statement of intent. The audit request went to Professor Snape on a Monday, delivered in person by Harry at 7:45, before the first class of the day. Harry knocked twice. Enter, the dungeon office was cold, shelves floor to ceiling, ingredients arranged for access speed rather than aesthetics. Snape looked up and his eyes moved from Harry's face to the armor to the hilt line and back. Mr. Potter, he said. Professor, Harry set the document on the desk. Gringotts Bank, acting in its capacity as financial administrator of the Hogwarts school supply contracts, is initiating a routine audit of the potions department's ingredient inventory. Under the terms of the supply contract, you have 3 days to prepare the inventory ledger for review. Snape looked at the document without touching it. Gringotts administers the school's supply contracts, he said, with the flatness of someone choosing a word carefully. For more than 100 years, Harry said. Page 9, if you want the reference. He picked up his bag. 3 days, Professor. Hermione conducted the audit on Thursday. At line 14 she stopped. Boomslang skin, 32 units received, September 1989. 19 units currently in inventory. No teaching use justified the gap. The Hogwarts curriculum introduced boomslang skin in 5th year, and there were no 5th year students. Snape produced the research log within 22 hours. It was specific, genuine, thoroughly documented. The units were accounted for in ongoing personal research. Hermione and Harry filed the audit as complete, no discrepancy requiring further action. Walking away from the dungeon, Harry said quietly, "Polyjuice." "Boomslang skin is one key ingredient," Hermione said. "Someone in this school is either brewing it or was given the materials. Snape knows what it was used for and didn't use it himself." She paused. "We watch, we note. We distinguish between what is documented and what is suspected. We act only on what is documented." "Ironshard would say the same thing," Harry said. "Ironshard taught me the principle," Hermione said. The planning for the 3rd-floor corridor happened over 3 evenings in February. Harry and Hermione in the library, the Gringotts ward-breaking manual open between them, working through each of the 7 protective layers the Cursebreaker's ward report had identified. Fluffy, music, but not the enchanted harp keyed to the room. A neutral bone flute purchased specifically for its magical neutrality. Devil's snare, goblin lights, sustaining heat and illumination independently. Flying keys. Flint-Eye's brass scanner reading the active enchantment signature of the correct key among hundreds of passive decoys. The chess set, read as a whole system, not a sequence of moves. The winning line obvious once you treated the board as architecture. The troll, pre-subdued by whoever had been through before them. Snape's logic puzzle, 7 potions, 4 minutes to solve from the clues. Less if they didn't rush. And the mirror. The mirror of Arist, Hermione said. The stone is accessible only to someone who wants to find it, but not use it. Who sees themselves finding it rather than using it. We have genuine intent, Harry said. We're not there to use it. We're there to remove it from an inadequately secured location. The question is whether the mirror can tell the difference between true intent and stated intent, she said. Can it? I think that's exactly what it's designed to do, she said. They went on a Saturday night. Bone flute through Fluffy, goblin lights through the devil's snare, scanner to identify the bent-winged key, 6 minutes on the chessboard, around the unconscious troll, Hermione's 3rd bottle solution to Snape's puzzle, and then the mirror. Harry approached it. His reflection reached into the pocket of its robes and produced a small red stone, and he felt the weight of it arrive in his own actual pocket simultaneously. He reached in. The stone was there. Small, heavy, warm in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. Hermione was already opening her instrument case. She produced the document prepared since February, 6 pages, Gringotts letterhead, reviewed by the bank's legal division. She set it on the stone floor and pressed the foreclosure seal to the final page. The seal glowed red. The document read, in formal banking language, Notice of Asset Recovery. The Philosopher's Stone was held in Gringotts Vault 713 until the 31st of July in the year Potter turned 11, at which date it was removed for transfer to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Said transfer was not accompanied by the requisite asset custody agreement under Section 12 of the Gringotts Security Protocols. The bank is hereby recovering the asset under its standing right of repossession. Recovery authorized under Potter Trust Audit Authority, Case File 1186 pp. Sovereign Ward Provision. She filed the document. Harry left a copy on the chamber floor for whoever arrived next, weighted with a stone, the first thing anyone entering from outside would see. "The situation is closed," Harry said. They walked back through the silent castle, and Harry held the satchel and thought about the difference between solving a problem and surviving it. About the specific satisfaction of a situation designed to be run as a gauntlet that had instead been read as what it actually was. An asset management problem. Resolved through the correct paperwork. Filed before midnight. The writing appeared on the wall on a Thursday evening in October. Harry was in the library when Hermione found him. She had been coming from the direction of the second-floor corridor, moving at the speed she moved when something required immediate attention, but running would draw the wrong kind of attention. She sat down across from him. "Chamber of Secrets," she said quietly. "The legend is real." "I know," Harry said. She looked at him. "Since when?" she said. "Since the diary," Harry said. "Ginny Weasley, Ron's sister. She's been writing in an enchanted diary that writes back, 'I felt the cold knock off it 2 weeks ago, and I've been watching the pattern since.'" He paused. "The diary is a Horcrux." Hermione went very still. "Flint Eye's notation," she said. "The soul stain in your scar. You think they're connected." "I think they're the same mechanism," Harry said. "Someone split their soul and put pieces of it into objects. The scar, the diary, possibly others." He looked at the table. "The diary is controlling Ginny. Whatever is in the chamber is being directed by whatever is in the diary. We need the diary," Hermione said. "And we need to know what else might exist. If someone made multiple, I've been thinking about that too," Harry said. "The diary's financial provenance. The blood ledger. Gringotts tracks the ownership history of every object that has passed through its vaults or been purchased through wizarding commerce. If the same person created multiple objects of dark significance, the audit trail through their estate records might identify them." Hermione looked at him. "Tom Riddle," she said. "If that's who made the diary, his financial history, his family estate, objects associated with his bloodline." She was already opening her notebook. "I'll write to Ironshard tonight. Request a full blood ledger audit of the Gaunt family estate and the Slytherin line. Every object of significant magical provenance that passed through that family's hands." "And the Black family records," Harry said. "Regulus Black. He was a Death Eater who turned. Sirius mentioned him once when I was reading the family history in the archive. If Riddle shared objects with loyal followers for safekeeping, Regulus's Gringotts vault records will show if he acquired anything unusual," Hermione said. "We can request that as part of the audit." She wrote 3 lines and looked up. "This is patient work. It won't be finished this year." "No," Harry said. "But we start now. We talk to Ginny tonight." The conversation happened in an empty classroom at 9 o'clock. Harry told Ginny what the diary was, not gently, not at length, but clearly, which was the more respectful approach because it assumed she could handle accurate information. She gave him the diary. Her hand was shaking and her jaw was set, and she did not cry. "It's been making me do things," Ginny said. "I don't remember doing them. I wake up and my robes have mud on them and I don't know where I've been." "It's not going to make you do anything else," Harry said. "I have it now." "Did I write on the wall? We don't know yet," Hermione said. "But it doesn't matter for what happens to you. You didn't choose to write in the diary. You didn't choose what it used you for." Ginny looked at them both. "What are you going to do?" she said. "Deal with it," Harry said, starting with what's in the chamber. The entrance was in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. Harry had worked it out from first principles, Parseltongue locked, which meant a mechanism, which meant a location. Findable by reading the available evidence. The evidence was the flooding. Myrtle's bathroom flooded regularly and nobody could account for why. Not the pipes, not the fixtures. A byproduct of something in the room that moved water when it moved. A pipe, specifically a sink with a serpent on the tap that Harry had noted early in the year and filed for later. He stood at the sink and said, in Parseltongue, "Open." The sink descended. The equipment had been prepared over 3 weeks. 2 sets of light-sealed goggles, goblin-wrought, the lenses ground from a mineral that filtered vision to remove the lethal quality of direct eye contact with a basilisk. Hermione had designed the modification with Flinteye's input, tested by Harry looking directly at a mirror. A vial of a compound from the sub-level chemistry records, an effective neural inhibitor for serpents of the relevant family, introduced as a mist. Not poison, a sedative. The distinction mattered. The chamber was vast. Cathedral scale, the ceiling lost in darkness, the floor running with a thin layer of water. Stone columns carved with serpent reliefs. At the far end, the stone face of Salazar Slytherin, his carved mouth open, darkness behind it. The basilisk came out slowly, 60 feet long. It oriented toward Harry with the heat-sensing lateral line it used when its primary sense was blocked. Harry spoke. Parseltongue measured, "I am not here to fight you. I am here to talk." The basilisk stopped. It was not used to being spoken to. "You speak the tongue," it said. The voice arrived as vibration through the floor and sternum simultaneously. "I speak it," Harry said. "I am not here as an enemy. The object controlling you, the diary, I have it. I'm going to destroy it. When it's destroyed, the compulsion ends. You'll be free of it. Silence, then, and then." "And then you choose," Harry said. "That's the offer. You've been in this chamber for 1,000 years under a compulsion you didn't choose. The compulsion ends, and after that, your decisions are your own. My decisions have never been my own." "I know," Harry said. "I'm offering to change that." The chamber was quiet. Hermione, behind Harry and to his left, was reading the situation through the basilisk's body language and Harry's posture, waiting with the patience she had developed over years of trusting Harry's read of things she couldn't directly access. "If I submit to the sedative," the basilisk said, "I am helpless." "For approximately 4 hours," Harry said, "long enough for us to work. When you wake, the compulsion is gone and we're gone, and the chamber is yours. This is your chamber. We're auditors. We remove the asset. We don't take the building." The basilisk considered this. Then it lowered its head. Hermione worked quickly. The sedative took 4 minutes to achieve full sedation. The basilisk went down slowly, its weight settling onto the chamber floor in sections. The head coming to rest in the thin water with a displacement that sent ripples to the walls. While she harvested, methodical, thorough 12 fangs carefully extracted and sealed. The shed skin from the tail section gathered. 12 vials of venom drawn precisely. Harry destroyed the diary. A single fang through the cover. The diary bled black ink. Literally, the ink that had preserved Tom Riddle's consciousness flooding out onto the chamber floor, spreading in the water, going thin and gray and cold. The cold knock died. Harry held the punctured diary and felt the absence of it. The specific quality of a presence that had been there and was now not there, like a sound below the threshold of conscious hearing that was suddenly gone. "I'm sorry," he said, in Parseltongue, though the basilisk couldn't hear him. "For the 1,000 years. For the compulsion you didn't choose. I'm sorry it took this long for someone to come down here and offer you one." He put the diary in the satchel and walked back to where Hermione was finishing the labeling. They emerged from the chamber well past midnight. The castle was silent. The following week, a letter from Ironshard arrived confirming receipt of the Blood Ledger audit request. The research into the Gaunt estate, the Slytherin bloodline, and Regulus Black's vault records had begun. The Ministry of Magic received the invoice the following month. itemized in the specific detail of a document prepared by someone who understood that vague invoices were disputed and specific invoices were not. Basilisk venom, 12 vials, grade 1. Basilisk skin, 200 square feet, grade 1 conductivity. Basilisk fangs, 12 units. Below the items, a note. Gringotts Bank would welcome clarification on the DME's position regarding a basilisk residing in a school occupied by minors for the better part of a millennium. This invoice does not require a response on this point. It merely notes the question for the record. The invoice was signed by Hermione Granger, junior researcher, Gringotts Bank. The DME paid within 10 days. No formal inquiry was announced. The note about the security failure remained in the permanent record. The flag appeared in the routine prisoner audit on a Tuesday in March. Not a dramatic discovery, a procedural one, the kind that happened when a system designed to find things was allowed to run long enough to find them. The Gringotts Prisoner Financial Audit was not a new program. It had existed for nearly 3 centuries, authorized under a clause of the original Azkaban governance agreement that gave the bank standing to verify the financial holdings of all magical prisoners annually, for the purpose of ensuring that outstanding debts to the bank were not left unresolved during incarceration. Nobody at the ministry had thought about this clause in living memory. Hermione had found it in the same archive pass that had produced the Sovereign Guest Clause and the Supply Contract Audit provision. The flag read, Prisoner Financial Audit, Azkaban Facility. Flagged account, black, Sirius Orion. Irregularity detected, no criminal conviction on file. Cross-reference Ministry Criminal Records, case opened 1 November 1981, status listed as closed, convicted. Supporting documentation requested, trial transcript, sentencing record, conviction certificate. Documentation received, none. Irregularity classification, critical. Escalation required. Harry read it twice. He set it down. No trial, he said. No trial, Hermione said. No conviction documentation of any kind. The ministry listed the case as closed and convicted and sent him to Azkaban and never produced a single piece of paperwork to support it. She paused. Because there was no paperwork. Because there was no trial. He's been there for 12 years, Harry said. 12 years, without a trial, without a conviction, without any legal proceeding of any kind. Hermione set the second document on the table. The prisoner audit irregularity triggers an automatic review request under Section 7 of the Azkaban Governance Agreement. The review request goes to the Wizengamot Chief Warlock, not to the Minister. Fudge cannot intercept it. Dumbledore is Chief Warlock, Harry said. He's required to act on it, Hermione said. A Section 7 escalation is mandatory review. He has no discretion. She paused. The governance agreement that Gringotts is a signatory to and has standing to enforce. Send it, Harry said. The Section 7 review convened on a Wednesday in mid-April. Pettigrew was collected from the Weasley household by 2 Gringotts curse-breakers operating under the Prisoner Audit Authority. Their right to physically collect a person of interest in an active financial irregularity case was buried in Section 12 of the Azkaban Governance Agreement, unused in 2 centuries. Pettigrew transformed out of animagus form under a counter-jinx administered by Flint Eye, who had come from the sublevels personally for the occasion. He looked at the small, pale, shaking man on the Weasley kitchen floor, with the expression of someone completing a long-overdue piece of accounting. Pettigrew was placed in Gringotts' own secure holding facility rather than Azkaban. Because Azkaban was a ministry facility, and the ministry's handling of custody was currently under active review. He was confined in a cell warded specifically to detect and counter animagus transformation, because Flintay had noted in the placement report that a prisoner who could become a rat presented particular security considerations that standard holding protocols did not address. The anti-transformation wards were the work of a senior cursebreaker and were, the report noted, dryly, thorough, The Wizengamot session was fully attended, formally on the record. Harry attended as a Gringotts audit witness, not as a spectator. Hermione sat beside him. Pettigrew testified under veritaserum for 2 hours. The Wizengamot chamber was very quiet during the testimony. Not the quiet of shock, but the quiet of people listening to something they had needed to hear for 12 years and were finally being given the opportunity to hear. The correspondence from the Potter archive was entered into the record. The Gringotts blood ledger verification of its authenticity was entered beside it. The vote was 47-3. Sirius Orion Black. Innocent wrongful imprisonment. Conviction expunged. Peter Pettigrew. Guilty, sentenced. Sirius came out of Azkaban 3 days after the vote. He was thin in the way that people were thin after 12 years in a place designed to extract everything that made a person themselves. And his hair was long and his eyes had the quality of someone who had been in the dark for a long time and was recalibrating to light. Harry met him at the Gringotts receiving office in London, where the formal release papers were being processed. Sirius stood in the receiving office and looked at Harry. "You're James's son," he said. His voice was rough. "Yes," Harry said. "You got him out," Sirius said. "Wormtail, the review. All of it." He looked at Harry with the expression of someone trying to locate a frame of reference and not finding one. "How?" "Paperwork," Harry said. Sirius blinked. "Paperwork," he said. "The right paperwork," Harry said. "Filed correctly, with the right authority behind it." He paused. Ironshard says that most injustices persist not because they're defensible, but because nobody with standing bothered to file the correct form. Something moved in Sirius's face, not quite a smile and not quite grief, and made of both. "James would have hated that answer," he said. "I know," Harry said. "It's still true." Sirius looked around the Gringotts receiving office, the marble, the goblin clerks. "The Amberlights. You were raised here," Sirius said. "Below here," Harry said. "Sub-level 4. You can see it, if you want." When Hermione presented Sirius with the account balance, 12 years of accrued interest compounded quarterly, he sat down. He started. 12 years at the standard trust interest rate, Hermione said. Sirius looked at the figure. He looked at Hermione. "Who are you?" he said. "Hermione Granger," she said. "Junior researcher. I found the audit irregularity." "In what?" Sirius said. "The prisoner financial audit clause," she said. "Section 7 of the centuries-old Azkaban governance agreement." Sirius stared at her. "You found a clause in a document that old that freed me from Azkaban," he said. "It took 4 months to build the full mechanism," she said. The clause was just the starting point. Sirius looked at Harry. "She's 13, he said. "Turned it last September," Harry said. Sirius was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed, a real laugh, rough and short. The sound of someone using a muscle that had not been used in 12 years and finding it still worked. "Right," he said. "All right." He picked up the pen for the release documentation. "Let's do the paperwork." Harry took him down. Sub-level 4. The corridor, the training hall, the amber lights that burned with their steady indifference to the time of day. Ironshard walked them through it, precise and professional. The tour of someone showing a person the place where someone they cared about had grown up. Sirius stood in the training hall and looked at the rune charts on the walls, at the forged training equipment, at the clay tablets and the stylus marks on the stone floor where Harry had sat, cross-legged, learning the shape of every word that mattered. He did not speak for a long moment. When James and Lily died, Sirius said quietly, "I thought." He stopped. He looked at the sovereign rune on the wall, the vertical line bisected by 2 horizontals. "I thought you'd been placed somewhere with people who loved you. That was the only thing I could." He stopped again. "I should have checked." "You were in Azkaban," Harry said. "Before," Sirius said. That night. I should have. You were chasing Wormtail, Harry said. You were doing what made sense with what you knew. The decisions were made by people with more authority than you, and less care. He looked at the wall. Gringotts found me. The outcome was, he thought about the word, sufficient. Better than it would have been otherwise. Sirius looked at him. At the armor. At the blade. At the boy who was 13 years old and had spent 8 years in the deep levels of a bank being taught that the most important language in the world was the one written on things that lasted. You're going to be all right, Sirius said. Not reassurance, observation. Yes, Harry said. I am. The Goblet of Fire arrived at Hogwarts on a Thursday in October. Harry had known it was coming since the end of the previous summer, when the Ministry announcement went through the standard wizarding news channels, and Hermione had placed the relevant clippings in the research file she maintained on all active Ministry policy developments. The Triwizard Tournament. 3 schools. 3 champions. 1 winner. He had read the founding charter of the tournament in August. He had found what he was looking for on page 31. The announcement went to Ironshard by Owl on the same Thursday the goblet arrived. 2 pages, Harry's handwriting, precise and economical. The Triwizard Tournament is being held at Hogwarts this year. The founding charter of the tournament, Article 4, subsection 2, recognizes the entry of champions representing sovereign magical entities in addition to educational institutions. Gringotts Bank meets the definition of a sovereign magical entity under the Ragnuk Accord of 1402. I would like to enter as the Gringotts champion under this provision. Please advise on the formal submission process. Ironshard's reply arrived Saturday morning. Article 4, subsection 2 has not been invoked in 400 years. The legal division confirms it remains operative. Submission documentation will be prepared. Ironshard, attached, a 6-page legal document, the Gringotts seal already applied. The Great Hall on the night of the submission was arranged for the occasion, the goblet on its raised plinth, the age line drawn in a glowing circle around it. Harry waited until the crowd had thinned. He approached the age line, stopped at its edge, and produced the submission document. The goblet's flame shifted. Not immediately. It registered the document the way any complex magical object registered something unexpected, with a pause, a recalibration. Then, the flame went from blue-white to a deep amber gold that Harry recognized from the sub-level forge lights, and the document was taken from his hand by the goblet's draw without him crossing the age line. Because the submission was valid, and valid submissions did not require the submitter to breach any procedural boundary. McGonagall, standing 10 feet away, had gone very still. Article 4, subsection 2, Harry said. It's in the founding charter, page 31. The meeting with the headmasters the following Sunday evening was an acknowledgement rather than a negotiation. Karkaroff objected immediately, loudly, in 3 languages. Harry let him finish. Then he set the founding charter on the table, opened to page 31, and said, "The provision is operative." The goblet accepted the submission. If Durmstrang has a legal objection to Article 4, subsection 2, it can file that objection with the International Confederation of Wizards. The tournament proceeds. Karkaroff did not file an objection. The goblet made its selections on Halloween. Victor Krum for Durmstrang, Fleur Delacour for Beauxbaton, Cedric Diggory for Hogwarts. And then the amber gold returned to the flame, and a 4th slip of parchment emerged. Harry Potter. Gringotts Bank. The first task was dragons. Harry found out through the same channel as the other champions, Hagrid's creature paddock, the night before, the dragons behind the trees. He stood in the dark and looked at the 4 dragons and thought about the task not as a combat problem but as an engineering problem. The objective was a golden egg. The dragon was an obstacle. The obstacle could be engaged directly, or it could be repositioned. He went back to the castle and spent the evening with the ward-breaking manual, specifically the section on gravity wards, a variant of the standard technique that applied directional force to a bounded space rather than dismantling an existing enchantment. He calculated the configuration for a 40-foot perimeter around a creature of the relevant mass, requiring a sustained output of approximately 4 minutes. Hermione reviewed his calculations at 11 o'clock and found 2 errors. He corrected them. By midnight, the configuration was complete. "Can you hold it for 4 minutes?" Hermione said. "I've been running Forgecraft exercises for 6 years," Harry said. "Yes, the wandless output requirement is significant," she said. "That's why I'm sleeping 8 hours tonight," he said. The arena on a gray morning in late November was cold and full of noise. The other champions went first. Cedric, Fleur, Victor, each finding their way through the problem with their own training. Harry watched from the champions' tent and noted their approaches with professional attention. Then his name was called. He walked into the arena. The Hungarian Horntail was chained at the far end, the golden egg nested in the rock behind it. Harry stopped 20 feet from the dragon, planted his feet, placed both hands flat at his sides, and began. Forgecraft at scale was structural, not the accidental burst of a child's uncontrolled emotion, not the narrow channel output of a wand substitute technique. You did not direct force. You placed it. You constructed a geometry in the available space and held it. The gravity ward went up in sections. Harry felt the ambient magic of the arena and placed the first anchor point, then the second, then the third and fourth. The dragon felt it before it was complete. It turned, spread its wings, attempted to rear onto its haunches in the movement that preceded a fireburst. The gravity ward closed. Not a cage, a geometry of directed pressure in which vertical force was amplified and horizontal movement slowed. The dragon was not stopped. It was simply in a space where its mass worked against it, where the wings that should have lifted it were pushing against a force that responded to force with equivalent resistance. The dragon went down slowly, not in pain, not damaged. Down, the way a very heavy thing goes down when the mathematics of its weight shift from asset to liability. Harry was already moving. He picked up the golden egg. He walked backward to the arena entrance. He released the ward. The dragon stood immediately, shook itself, spread its wings. It looked at Harry with the intelligence of a creature that understood it had been managed rather than attacked. Harry had been gone from the arena before it decided what to do about that. The scores went up on the judging table. 9 from Madame Maxime, 9 from Dumbledore, 9 from Bagman, 9 from Crouch, 9 from Karkaroff, whose expression as he raised the number was the expression of a man who had underestimated something significantly and found no legitimate basis to respond otherwise. 5 9s, 45 points, the highest score of the first task by 7 points. In the stands, the crowd had the quality of a crowd that had watched something and was not yet sure how to categorize it. Not a battle, not an escape, not a performance of courage in any of the forms the tournament usually rewarded. A 14-year-old standing in an arena with a dragon and treating the dragon as a structural problem, resolved in 4 minutes 12 seconds with his hands at his sides. Harry came back through the champion's entrance, and Hermione was there. She handed him water. He drank it. The ward held for 4 minutes 12 seconds, she said. I timed it. I know, he said. I could feel when the anchor points were stable. The Horntail is fine, she said. Handlers confirmed. Good, he said. She looked at him. 45 points, she said. It was a Tuesday-level problem, Harry said. The calculation was straightforward once you had the anchor geometry correct. Hermione looked at him for a moment. Then, she wrote something in her notebook and closed it. Right, she said. What did you want for dinner? Flint-Eye sent the letter in April. 3 lines. His compressed rune annotated script, the soul stain in the scar has a name. I found it in the restricted metallurgy archive, deep in the sublevels, in a document centuries old. The name is Horcrux. Come when the tournament ends. We have work to do. Harry read it at breakfast. He passed it to Hermione without comment. She read it. She set it down. She picked up her tea and looked at the window and was quiet for a long moment. He said he'd tell you when he had a name, she said. He has a name, Harry said. She looked at the letter again. He found a solution, not a question. Flint-Eye did not send letters about problems. He sent letters about findings. We go after the third task, Harry said. She looked at him, at the steadiness of him, at the way he had read the letter and arrived at a plan without crossing through the territory of what the letter actually meant. Are you all right? She said. I've known something was wrong with the scar since Flint-Eye first scanned it, Harry said. Having a name for it is better than not having one. That's not what I asked, she said. He looked at the window. Ask me in June, he said. After, the Horcrux hunt had been running for 2 years alongside everything else, patient, methodical, built on the blood ledger audit of the Gaunt estate and the Slytherin bloodline that Hermione had commissioned in their second year. The audit had produced results in stages, each one requiring cross-referencing against the historical record, the magical provenance chains, the ownership histories embedded in the bank's oldest registers. The ring had been identified first. An object of Gaunt family origin, a signet ring bearing the Peverell crest, last recorded in the possession of Marvolo Gaunt, dead for decades, whose estate had never been formally settled. The ring was at the Gaunt shack near Little Hangleton. Ironshard had sent 2 curse-breakers to retrieve it. They had returned with the ring, badly cursed, a protective enchantment of considerable power on top of the Horcrux itself. The curse on the ring had taken Flint-Eye 3 weeks to neutralize before the ring itself could be destroyed. He had used a basilisk fang and had noted in his log that the stone set in the ring was a magical artifact in its own right and had been carefully preserved for separate study. The locket had come through Regulus Black's vault records. Sirius, once settled and working through his family archive, had found a note from his brother referencing a cave, a locket, and a decision Regulus had made at the cost of his life. The locket had been retrieved from the cave by curse breakers operating with a full team because the protections on it were considerable. Destroyed with a fang. The cup, a Hufflepuff artifact, identified through the Lestrange family vault's blood ledger provenance record, had required Hermione to file a formal asset audit request against the Lestrange estate under Potter Trust Audit Authority, the same mechanism she had used for the Malfoy vault. The audit had recovered the cup. A fang had done the rest. The diadem had taken longest to find. The blood ledger connected it to the Slytherin line's known interest in Ravenclaw artifacts. Tom Riddle had researched Hogwarts' history obsessively during his years as a student and as a young man, and the historical records showed his particular interest in Rowena Ravenclaw's diadem, which had been missing since the medieval period. Hermione had spent 6 weeks cross-referencing Riddle's known movements against the castle's own magical architecture, specifically the layers that had been altered or accessed in unusual ways during the period when Riddle had returned to apply for the Defense Against the Dark Arts position. The room of requirement, she had said, on a Tuesday evening in the library. The castle's enchantment responds to need. He would have needed somewhere to hide it that no one else would find. He would have needed a room full of hidden things. She had looked at Harry. It's already in the building. They had found the diadem on a Wednesday afternoon, in a room full of centuries of forgotten objects, vast, chaotic, piled high with everything that generations of students had hidden or discarded or lost. The diadem was on a broken wardrobe at the back, barely visible. Hermione had felt the cold knock of it before she saw it. Harry had destroyed it with a fang on the floor of the room, and the blue fire of it, a ghost of something that had been suppressed for decades, extinguished itself in the stone. That left Nagini. They knew she was with Voldemort. Wherever his spirit form resided, in whatever diminished state, the snake was with him. The blood ledger's tracking functions could detect the Horcrux's magical signature moving, not fixed to any known location, traveling. She could not be reached while she was with him. She was the one Horcrux they would have to wait for. If he tries to return, Hermione said, reviewing the audit file, Nagini will be present. Then we deal with her then, Harry said. And the scar, Hermione said, which leaves that as the last piece. Flint Eye first, Harry said. Then whatever comes after. The third task was in June. A maze. Harry went through it methodically, the ward-breaking techniques applied to the enchanted hedges, reading their structure and moving along the lines of least resistance. He found Cedric Diggory at the center, disoriented but unharmed, and the Triwizard Cup sat on its plinth between them. Harry looked at the cup. He ran Flint Eye's scanner over it. The reading came back in 4 seconds. Active portkey. Destination, unknown. Activation, contact. Don't touch it, Harry said. Cedric looked at the scanner. At the reading. Portkey, he said. Someone modified it, Harry said, after it was placed. The original tournament standard transport charm is in the base layer. The portkey is on top. Recent work, sloppy. He looked at the hedges around them. Someone wanted us to take the cup and go somewhere. Barty Crouch Jr., Cedric said quietly. Harry looked at him. I worked it out in March, Cedric said. Moody's flask. The magical signature fluctuation. I didn't have enough to act on, I wasn't sure. He paused. I should have said something. Yes, Harry said. But we're here now. He looked at the cup. We leave it. We walk out. We tell Dumbledore about the portkey modification. And the tournament? Cedric said. The tournament is a points competition, Harry said. I have 45 points. You have 38. We find the cup. We don't take it. We exit the maze. The task doesn't specify the cup must leave with the champion. Cedric was quiet for a moment. You read the task rules, he said. Hermione read the task rules, Harry said. She reads everything. They walked out of the maze. Harry went directly to Dumbledore and explained the portkey in 30 seconds, handed over the scanner reading, and said Barty Crouch Jr. in the same tone he used for audit findings. Dumbledore went very still. He went to deal with it, which took the rest of the evening. Harry went to the Gryffindor common room and slept for 9 hours. He woke to a letter from Ironshard. It was one line. Pettigrew has escaped Gringotts' holding. Animagus transformation detected too late. Anti-transformation ward on the cell had a gap we had not anticipated. I am dealing with it. Do not come to London yet. Ironshard. Harry read it. He read it again. He thought about Pettigrew, small and pale and desperate. The rat form he had lived in for 12 years, finding the one gap in a ward system built by people who had never before had to contain an animagus prisoner. He thought about where Pettigrew would go. About what Pettigrew had always done when cornered, found a stronger person to hide behind, made himself useful, made himself necessary. He wrote back to Ironshard. I know where he went. We proceed as planned. Come when you're ready. He sealed the letter and sent it. Then he lay back down and looked at the ceiling and thought about the chain of it. The diary destroyed. The ring, the locket, the cup, the diadem, the scar about to be dealt with, and one loose piece still moving, heading toward the thing it had always served. Nagini was with Voldemort. Pettigrew was heading for Voldemort. The last Horcrux was in Harry's scar, and Flint Eye had been working on removing it for 8 years. The situation was not resolved, but every piece of it was in motion, and every piece was known, and known problems were the only kind you could solve. He closed his eyes. He slept. They went to the sub-levels in the last week of June. Harry and Hermione, through the Gringotts lobby and down past the cart terminus into the deep levels where the air was warm and mineral, and the amber lights burned with their steady indifference to the time of day. Sub-Level 4. The corridor to Flint Eye's office, which Harry had walked hundreds of times, which he walked now with the specific quality of attention he gave to familiar things in unfamiliar circumstances. Flint Eye was at his desk. The ancient document was open in front of him, a large, flat manuscript, the vellum foxed with age, the text in a runic script that predated the standard Elder Futhark by 300 years, and that Harry could read, slowly, with effort. Ironshard was in the room as well. And 6 other goblins Harry knew, the senior cursebreakers, the senior metallurgists, the people of the deep levels who had been the texture of his childhood. He looked at them. "All of you," he said. "You're our ward," Ironshard said. "Simply, this is our function." Harry looked at Hermione. She was standing very straight, hands at her sides. Present. He sat down. Flint Eye explained the procedure completely, without reassurance. The document described a technique developed by a goblin metallurgist named Strikeoven for the removal of a soul fragment from a living host, developed during a period when the practice of Horcrux creation had been more widespread among the most powerful dark wizards of the medieval era. Strikeoven had encountered the problem 3 times, and had developed a solution each time, encoding the methodology in notation so specialized that the document had resisted interpretation until Flint Eye had spent 8 years learning the obsolete metallurgical script it was written in. The solution used goblin silver. Specifically, a plate of goblin-forged silver, inscribed with the specific runic sequence that the Sword of Gryffindor carried in its underlying structure, pressed against the site of the soul fragment's anchoring while a sustained forgecraft current ran through it. The same property that allowed goblin silver to absorb what it encountered and make it part of its own structure worked, under the correct forgecraft calibration, in reverse, drawing the foreign element out, into the silver, where it would be contained and neutralized permanently. "The process requires the host to be conscious," Flint Eye said. "The forgecraft current must be maintained for a minimum of 6 minutes. It is not comfortable." "How uncomfortable?" Harry said. "Significantly," Flint Eye said. "The soul fragment will resist. It has been in the host for 14 years. It is anchored. Removal is a process it will oppose through the host's own mind. It will show you things. It will attempt to convince you that the process is failing, that you are dying, that the things you value are being destroyed." He paused. "These will not be accurate representations. They will feel accurate." Harry looked at the silver plate on Flint Eye's desk. Palm-sized. Flat, the runic sequence inscribed in a spiral from center outward, each rune exactly spaced from the last. Flint Eye had spent 8 years on the research and months on the plate itself, refining it through the winter. "All right," Harry said. He lay on the stone table in the Cursebreaker's assessment room, the same room where Flint Eye had run the first scan 9 years ago. The same amber light, the same mineral smell. Ironshard stood at his right. Hermione stood at his left. The 6 Cursebreakers and metallurgists positioned around the table at intervals, their hands on the table's edge, establishing the forgecraft circuit. Flint Eye placed the plate against the scar. Harry felt it immediately, not the silver, but what the silver was in contact with. The thing in the scar registering the plate the way any organism registered a threat, with a reflexive contraction, a tightening. "Begin," Flint Eye said. The first thing the fragment showed him was the sub-levels burning. Not real. He knew it was not real. The knowledge did not make it less vivid, the amber lights going red, the stone walls cracking, Ironshard and Flint Eye burned away. Everything he had been given and everything he had built in this place reduced to a heat so total it had no color. He kept his eyes open. He looked at the ceiling. Stone, intact, the amber light steady overhead. He held the ceiling with his eyes and breathed. The fragment showed him Hermione. Her face going blank, the specific terrible blankness of someone whose mind had been taken. Then it showed him Ironshard's accounting ledger, file 1186 pp. Closed. And in the closure note, a single word. Abandoned. Harry breathed. He thought about Flinty leaving the metallurgy primer on his desk in the first week. About the 3 questions written in margins and the 3 answers that came back. He thought about the sovereign rune, the vertical line bisected by 2 horizontals, the upper one longer, and Ironshard's voice, the foundation is smaller because sovereignty does not rest on a broad base. It rests on a specific one. The fragment showed him his parents. James and Lily, not as photographs but as an absence, as the specific shape of people who were gone and had never been real to him, could never be real to him because he had never known them. Harry looked at the ceiling. He thought, I know what I have. I am not required to grieve what I don't. The fragment pushed harder. It showed him everything. The cupboard under the stairs, the Dursleys, the dark and the cold of it, everything before Gringotts, laid out in sequence like an argument, like a case being made for why the darkness and the scar was appropriate to the life around it. Harry looked at the ceiling. He thought, that was 5 years. There have been 9 years since. The 9 years are also true. The fragment began to come apart. He felt it the way he had felt the other Horcruxes come apart. Not dramatically, but with the specific quality of something losing coherence. The edges thinning. The compression at its center giving way to a dispersal that was not nothing but was irrevocably changed. The silver plate was warm against his forehead. He felt the drawing sensation, the fragment leaving the scar, moving through the plate's runic structure, the goblin silver taking it in the way it took, in everything it encountered. 7 minutes. Flinty lifted the plate. The scar was still there. The cold knock was not. Harry sat up. Hermione put her hand on his arm for a moment. Brief, specific. The gesture of someone marking something significant without dramatizing it. He said after a moment, I can't hear them. Hermione looked at him. The snakes, Harry said. He looked at the stone wall, where a small common grass snake sometimes wound through a crack in the mortar in the warm months. It was there now, moving across the stone. He looked at it and felt nothing. No resonance, no sense of another language sitting beneath ordinary perception, no awareness of what it was doing beyond the simple fact of a snake crossing a wall. The channel was empty. The parcel tongue, he said. It's gone. It came from the fragment, Hermione said quietly. Yes, Harry said. He looked at the snake. He thought about the basilisk, about the conversation in the chamber, the offer, the choice. That had been possible because of the fragment. He was glad the fragment was gone. He allowed himself, briefly, to also note that something had been lost. Both things were true. Ironshard held out the sealed case, triple-locked, rune-inscribed, the same silver alloy as the plate. This goes in your vault, Ironshard said. The deepest level, under the strongest lock we have. It cannot escape the silver. The silver cannot be opened by anything other than the blood of your specific line. It stays in the vault, Harry said. Forever if you choose, Ironshard said, or until someone develops a method of final destruction. That is a problem for later. Yes, Harry said. It is. 3 days later, Ironshard received word from the tracking teams he had deployed after Pettigrew's escape. Pettigrew had been located, Little Hangleton, the Riddle House, where a weakened and fragmented dark spirit had been hiding in the only host available, sustained by Nagini's venom administered by the one loyal servant who had found his way back to his master. Ironshard came to Harry with the report that evening. He's going to attempt the resurrection, Harry said, reading the tracking summary. He has already begun the preparations, Ironshard said. He will need blood. He cannot use yours, you are not there. He will use whatever he can take. He'll take it from someone else, Harry said. An enemy of Voldemort's. Any enemy will serve the ritual's requirements. The specific advantage of my mother's blood protection won't be there. But Pettigrew won't care about that. He just wants his master back in a body. Yes, Ironshard said. Then we let the ritual proceed, Harry said. A body with no Horcrux anchors is a mortal body. If we intercept before the ritual, we're chasing a spirit with no fixed location and one remaining Horcrux, Nagini. If we wait until after, the Horcrux is there in the graveyard with him, and the body is finite, and 12 curse breakers are more than sufficient. Ironshard looked at him. The tracking teams know the location, Harry said. Yes, Ironshard said. Then we have a collection action, Harry said. They went on a night in late June. 12 Gringotts curse breakers, Harry, Hermione, and Ironshard, arriving at the Little Hangleton graveyard through a Gringotts-specific transport enchantment that put them outside the graveyard's wards 12 minutes before Wormtail finished what he had started. Voldemort returned to a body at 11:43, a body with no soul anchors. The 6 deliberate Horcruxes destroyed, the diary, the ring, the locket, the cup, the diadem, and now with the scar fragment extracted and contained, the 7th was gone too. Nothing to fall back on, nothing to reach for in the moment when the body took a fatal blow. Just a man, restored to mortality by his own servant's desperation and a ritual that gave him back physical form without the one thing that had kept him from death for 50 years. Voldemort rose from the cauldron. He stood in the graveyard, and the night was cold, and his red eyes swept the darkness. 12 curse breakers stepped out of it. Nagini, coiled at the graveyard's edge, felt the shift before anything moved. She rose, spreading her hood, and Harry felt nothing now where the Parseltongue had been. He could not warn her. He could not negotiate. She was a Horcrux in the body of a living creature, and she could not be sedated and removed from the equation the way the Chamber Basilisk had been. Because she was not the Chamber Basilisk. She was Voldemort's instrument, and she would kill everything she could reach in the time she had. One of Ironshard's curse breakers had anticipated this. The first counter-curse hit Nagini before she completed her strike, a cutting ward that severed the head from the body in the same clean motion the sword of Gryffindor would have managed. And the snake went still, and the graveyard went quiet, and the last Horcrux was gone. What happened after was not a battle. It was a collection action. 9 minutes. Voldemort, in a body that had no armor, fighting 12 armed goblins and 2 14-year-olds, who had spent years building the specific preparedness for this specific moment. The body that had housed what remained of Tom Riddle's soul was bound, secured, transported to the Gringotts holding facility pending the Ministry's formal processing. There was no magic left in it worth measuring. Ironshard stood in the graveyard afterward and looked at Pettigrew, who had been caught attempting to transform, and made a single notation in his ledger, anti-transformation ward specifications to be updated. Gap closed. He closed the ledger. He handed Pettigrew to the curse breakers. They went home. The letter arrived at the Ministry on a Monday 6 months later. 43 pages, carried by Ironshard personally, with Silveridge, the Gringotts head of legal affairs, walking beside him. They walked through the Ministry atrium at 9 in the morning, and the crowd parted with the specific quality of crowds, parting for things they didn't entirely have a category for. The proposal had 5 sections. Section 1 addressed the wand ban, not asking for repeal by ministerial goodwill, but invoking the Section 18 challenge mechanism of the Ragnuk Accord, which required the Wizengamot to produce a legal justification for the ban's continued operation under Accord standards within 90 days, or the ban would be considered void by treaty law. Section 2 addressed blood status classification, presenting a blood ledger analysis of half a century of employment and resource discrimination, the kind of data that produced its own conclusion without requiring anyone to be persuaded of anything except arithmetic. Sections 3 and 4 addressed Wizengamot representation and Azkaban's governance. Section 5 proposed the Goblin Wizard Co-Governance Council, not advisory, not consultative, but binding, meeting quarterly, decisions enforceable through the Accord's existing mechanisms. It was, in Silveridge's language, not a request for inclusion in the existing structure, but a notification of the terms under which Gringotts would continue its partnership with the wizarding world going forward. The vote happened on day 89. Harry and Hermione were in the sub-levels. Sub-level 4, the training hall. Harry was working through a rune transcription exercise, the same kind he had been working through since he was 6 years old, copying a vault inscription from a clay tablet onto parchment, matching the pressure and angle of the original cuts. Hermione was at her desk, writing, already 3 lines into her draft for the implementation committee. Ironshard came to the training hall at 3 in the afternoon. He stood in the doorway. Harry looked up. "The vote," Ironshard said. Sections 2, 3, and 4 passed. Section 5 passed with amendments. Section 1, a pause, functional, the beat before accurate information, passed, 31 to 22. Harry set down the stylus. Hermione closed her notebook. The training hall was quiet, the amber light steady overhead. The rune charts on the walls were the same ones Harry had been reading since he was 6. The sovereign symbol on the first chart, the vertical line bisected by 2 horizontals, upper one longer, foundation smaller than the authority it supported. "The wand ban is void," Harry said, "by operation of treaty law." "Yes," Ironshard said. The 3 of them were quiet for a moment. Then Hermione said, "Flint-Eye should know." "Flint-Eye already knows," Ironshard said. "He's in his office. He is doing what he always does." "Working," Hermione said. "Yes," Ironshard said. Harry looked at the rune chart. He thought about the wand ban and the generations of goblin rebellions it had generated, and the specific bitter persistence of a people who had continued to litigate their standing through riots and petitions and negotiations that collapsed. And through all of it, the Ragnuk Accord had been sitting in the legal archive, waiting for someone to read Section 18. 2 teenagers had read it. One of them had grown up in the sub-levels being taught that old law was the most useful law. The other had read everything. "What happens now?" Harry said. "Now," Ironshard said, "the implementation begins." Which is longer than the proposal, and less dramatic and considerably more work. He looked at Harry with his copper eyes. "You'll help." "Yes," Harry said. "You'll both help," Ironshard said, looking at Hermione. "Obviously," Hermione said. She had already reopened her notebook. Ironshard looked at them both. Something moved in his face, not the managed professional expression of a senior vault warden conducting official business, but something underneath it. Something that belonged to the specific relationship between a guardian and a ward, when the ward has grown into something the guardian worked toward for a long time and is now looking at directly. He did not name what it was. He didn't need to. "The implementation committee meets Thursday," he said. 9 o'clock. He left. Harry picked up the stylus. He looked at the clay tablet, the rune he had been copying before Ironshard arrived, the 3rd symbol on the 2nd row, the angle of it, the pressure of the original cut. He had been copying this tablet, or ones like it, since he was 6 years old. He would probably be copying tablets like it when he was 60. That was not a complaint. He set the stylus to the parchment. Hermione was writing beside him, and the amber light was steady overhead. And below them the deep vaults held their old mineral warmth, and somewhere above them Wizarding Britain was beginning the slow, difficult work of becoming something different from what it had been. Not because anyone had performed an act of extraordinary heroism, not because a prophecy had been fulfilled or a chosen one had risen to his destiny. Because 2 children had been given access to a library and the time to read it. Because a goblin vault warden had filed the correct paperwork on a summer morning when a 5-year-old sat in a cupboard counting days and had not stopped filing it. Because old law, applied correctly by people who had bothered to understand it, was more durable than any structure built on the assumption that the people it disadvantaged would never find the right clause. Harry copied the rune. He checked the angle. He got it right. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.